Okay, well, kind of an odd time for me to be doing a live stream on YouTube, but I thought maybe it'd probably be a good time to come on. Hello, everyone. Today is the 14th of March, 2026. It's Saturday afternoon, and hopefully this is going up. I'll kind of ramble on for another. Well, looks like we've got somebody watching, so I guess it's working. I guess I could pull this a little closer. How's that? That might be a little better. Doesn't matter much. Hey, hello everybody. Hi, nice to see you. Good afternoon. I even brought my glasses so I can look at the chat here if we decide to do that. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. The games nations play. Isn't this just all getting just totally ridiculous? Not only are they engaging in foreign wars, but they're also engaging in basically gaslighting and warring against their own people. They favor foreigners, let's put it that way, over their own people. And the things that are happening now, especially in Europe and in the United States, are reprehensible as far as the way that they're treating their own people, the ones that actually built those nations over years, sometimes centuries, sometimes millennia. So I thought after I heard some other things today, I thought it'd be probably a good idea to come on. Let me ask first of all if everything's 5x5. I hope it is. You might want to let me know. I think we're doing well here from what I can tell. The chat is on, so hopefully everything is working, the picture and the sound. Okay, I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much. Kimball Richard, Kimball and Kim Blanchard. I'll get that straight here in a minute. All right. The first casualty of war is truth. And unfortunately, this time that was a person. The first casualty of war was Charlie Kirk. At least that's the way it's looking. I've been following that, of course, not just through Candace Owens, but others. And you're still going to have a hard time finding out what the truth is because they don't want you to know the truth. I can see arguments on both sides that Charlie was actually murdered, and the other side that it's a drama. I wouldn't want to denigrate his memory if he's gone because I think he was trying, as far as I could tell, he was trying to do the very best he could, and he did have a very charismatic personality, and I think was dedicated to his cause and to his God. He also was committed to wanting to help a very nefarious individual to get into the presidency and supposedly fix things, which turned out, of course, not to be the case. And of course, I'm talking about his support of Trump. Misplaced, just like apparently he also chose a wife that probably wasn't in his best interest as well. And that's very easy for men to do. Actually, it's very easy for everybody to do, to choose the wrong spouse. But in this case, as I put up some time ago on my video about honeypots, I think he got captured on that one. The many things we've been learning about Erica Kirk, in my experience dealing with these types of things, she has all the earmarks of being a handler, a honeypot, and certainly being run not just by the intelligence agencies in our country, but by that little foreign country in the Middle East as well. It's definitely looking that way. So I won't comment on any more of her possible nefarious suspect activities. That's being discussed elsewhere, but I just want you to know that I'm fully aware of what's going on. And in my estimation, just from my experience, I think she's guilty as hell on all counts. I'll just put it that way, okay? Poor Charlie. But us men, we should know what it's like to be captured by a beautiful woman who seems to be the right person for us, and then at a certain point it becomes difficult. And apparently, just before he was murdered, it's very likely that he was pulling away from her after he possibly realized what was going on. I don't know all the circumstances, but certainly looks that way. But that's not the only thing I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to say that in passing. That's just a real tragedy there. And of course, there are other casualties of war, other truths that are going on. We don't really know what's happening in Ukraine. We don't really know what's happening in Venezuela. We don't really know what's happening, of course, in the war between Iran and the U.S. and Israel. Uh, both sides are going to be using propaganda. You can't really believe anything that you see or hear. And I've said that for a long time. It used to be you could believe half of what you see and none of what you hear, and these days you can't trust either one. And I'm going to talk about a specific example of that here in just a few minutes, which I'm sure a lot of you are already more than aware of. By the way, I didn't know what hat to wear today. I was thinking, I want to talk about these political situations, but I'm going to hit on some of these, spiritual, religious issues as well. And so I thought, well, this is probably the best hat. Plus, I'm using my camera on the selfie side so I can see because I'm not using my laptop to double check the transmission. And I didn't want everything to be reversed. So that's another reason why I'm doing this the way I am and wearing this hat and not the other one. And I'm using just a single light in the TV room here, in the relaxation room, as you can probably tell, rather than down in the little set that I have for these types of things. I wanted it to be relaxing this afternoon. It's Saturday. I mean, good grief, we got enough going on without making it too hyper. So anyway, like I said, there's a lot of other truths that are being slain, being ignored, and none of these governments can be trusted. None of them. And unfortunately, Israel and the United States in particular. Not ruling out Iran, not ruling out all the others as well, but the thing is we were promised so much, and of course it's all been reversed. I've been on X. X is where I spend a lot of my time, as most of you know. And again, I'm going to say it really would behoove you, even though you don't like X, okay, to go there and at least join up on X, and then you can follow me. Yeah, you can get rid of all those other things you don't want to hear, all the bots, all the crazy stuff that's on there. You can filter that out. But if you want to see what people like me are talking about on a daily basis, because I'm not doing these YouTube things often anymore, that's the place to go. And I would appreciate it if you would do that. I'm not looking for more people, because no matter how many follow me on there, subscribe to me, whatever, X keeps me at about 20,000, 20.9. That's where they keep me. It might go up to 21,000 for a day, and then it'll drop down to 20.9. I'm definitely being shadow banned, censored, and throttled on X. There's no doubt about it. Of course I expect that. It's one reason why I didn't go for the blue check mark, because even that didn't protect people from getting censored by Elon in the long run. So I don't trust it. I just use it for what it is. YouTube, same thing. As you know, I've cut back a lot here, and for the same reason. But every once in a while, it's kind of nice to do so you can interact with people right away here, and I appreciate those of you who follow me. Which brings up another point before I get into the meat of all this. On X a few days ago, I got really discouraged. I'll be honest about it. It's frustrating. I'm so happy, as I said there. I'm so happy for people that have a lot of influence that are on the right side of things. Who are you, Roy, to say what's on the right side of things? Age, experience, and everything else that I've gone through. Experience, I guess, would be the way. There are some good people out there, despite all the venom that's being spewed at them at this point. I'm not saying I trust everybody all the time, but some people are putting out some really good things right now, and they're risking a lot by doing so. Of course, I'm talking about Tucker Carlson. I'm talking about Candace Owens, and there are some questions about Candace Owens. I know that. I'm very, very familiar with all the background and the things that could be going on there. But regardless, there's a lot of good information coming out. I mean, do you trust the MSM? If you at all turn on CNN or Fox News and you listen to them, well, you can't do any worse by listening to Candace Owens, okay, or Tucker Carlson. Certainly can't do any worse. There might still be some problems there, but nothing like the major news. So that's where you have to use your own discernment and why, I'm careful about things, okay? And you should be too, but you need the information regardless. Owen Schroyer, excellent. And there are a bunch of others. I could spend a lot of time naming a bunch of people, but you get the idea. Uh, then there are detractors out there, people that will support the system no matter what, and are really working for the intelligence agencies, their own bias for whatever reason, or foreign governments. On X in the last little while, I've tussled with, and I've had this problem now for a long time. I've been very critical, of course, of the U.S. government, of what we do around the world. That the advertisement by the Navy that the United States Navy of a global force for good is a joke. It's not true, and I want our nation to be what it was supposed to be, not this empire that will do anything to take over more power, more resources, and survive as a behemoth, as a leviathan, controlling everybody. Look what they're trying to do to our own people. Surveil them all the time, tax them to death. All the things. I can name everything. Take away your First Amendment rights because of some country that's now decided that it's going to call itself a religion. I mean, it's just bad. It's just bad, and I don't see it getting any better. So anyway, there's a lot of truth, being slain out there. Uh, and I thought I'd bring up a couple of specifics about Trump in particular, because he promised so much, and he has delivered nigh near nothing of any significance, of any lasting value. And people will argue, oh, he's done this and that. There are a lot of people out there that are his cheerleaders, and some of these people that I've dealt with on X for years that I've had respect for, and on YouTube, but mostly on X, former military officers, retired military officers, IC people, all that. And I see the things that they're supporting and saying, and I'm just going to be honest, and they're not going to like this, and they can do whatever they like, they can stop following me or whatever. They're either part of the cover up and the conspiracy. In other words, they're lying about things, or they're so blinded by their own quote unquote patriotism, and you know what the saying is on that: patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. I don't know what it is. A lot of these people have spent time, in the war on terror and going over to Afghanistan and Iraq and these places, and they put themselves in danger. They had their friends, injured or killed, and they are responsible themselves for killing many, many people, if not hundreds or thousands, on their own. And so their psyche, their conscience has to justify that, so they'll back up everything this government does, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. And it's very frustrating to me. And that's what happened this last week. I see these people doing this. One particular, he'll know who he is. So don't want to get too specific, but this attack on the Pentagon back in 2001 on 9/11. Saying things about what he saw there that I know for a fact he's lying about. I just trying to justify, the attack as the way that the government framed it. And that just bugs me that they do that. They know better, and they use their professional background to give credence to what they're saying. And I know they're lying, and so if I can't get people like that to wake up, I don't want to use that term, it's too common now. If I can't get people to examine their own conscience, look at it and say, I got to do the right thing despite what power wants me to do. If they won't do that, they've not only lost my respect, but I personally think they're putting their souls in danger. I really do. But that's just an example. And then, of course, I've talked a lot about religion. I don't know the answer to everything. Of course I don't. But I definitely have a different perspective than most people in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, or any number of other religious or spiritual systems have. And I know that. And people say, well, Roy, you're an outsider. You're kind of a weirdo, whatever, because you're not following this thing over here. Well, frankly, I'm glad I don't. I see so many inconsistencies and problems with it that, I have spoken about it. I've told you a lot of that. It's on my religion series here, a playlist on YouTube. I've explained that. I've talked about the Eisenman series with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and other things too, not just Judaism, Israelite culture and tradition. I've had a lot of respect for that, as I've said in my books. But at the same time, I see the problems in them, in that they're much of it, despite I'm going to hurt a lot of feelings here, get people angry. Much of it's man-made up. It's man-made up, and that's sorry. That's sad. That's not saying that that many of the things in there aren't good. How to live your life, how to treat people right, and all that. But there are also some really bad things in there that seem to be justified. People say, well, that's what it's about. It's about a people coming to a consciousness level. But they justify their evil deeds by quoting that thing. You see that, and it just goes on and on and on. Paula White in the White House, the spiritual advisor for Trump, he ought to be damned embarrassed by her. How he can, that just proves my point. I just, and I shouldn't name names, but I can't help myself sometimes. You gotta peg it. So at any rate, I had some people say some things. I've been real. The history of how we view the supernatural, how we view God, how we view life, how we view what happens to us after death, all these things. This has been in our psyche, our conscience, our questioning modes for thousands of years, and there are a lot of different viewpoints on it, and I don't think anybody has it exactly right. I mean, I certainly don't. But people that say they do, you got to watch out for somebody that says stuff like that, or that they know for a fact something or other. Some do, but you've got to be careful there. And unfortunately, too many of the religions are too dogmatic. I don't care which ones, and I'm not going to name them. I could name them all day. But I've been through nearly all of them, and I find the same problem in every one. They get behind their dogma, and they just their bias and their prejudice is such that they're afraid that if they do question, that then they'll be told that they have lack of faith and that they're questioning God. No, I think God wants you to question. I think He wants you to be aware and seek out the truth regardless of the consequences. As I say in my profile on my X account, I'd rather be uncomfortable with the truth than comfortable with a lie. I mean, and if you don't arrive at that point, what is the point? So there were some comments made. I'm not going to get too specific here. So I talked about the politics side, about people that I try to reach, and they just, they're what they've done in their lives or whatever. They just can't take that step of looking at the honest truth and doing something about it. And then the same thing happens on the spiritual side, and I've talked about it for a long time, as I said. And this question about God's name came up again, and I've given some classes on the Tetragrammaton, on the YHVH, and how I look at it. It's not just a Jewish thing. They got it from somebody else. There's evidence of it that it was in Egypt, and even before that. And I pointed out that it's not really a name. It's actually what we are. It's God's family profile. It's how he has organized that, whoever He is. And it's still going back to where people are quoting these other supposed researchers, and they are. Some of them are very good. I know about the Gnostic Gospels. I know about the Nag Hammadi. I know about Zechariah Sitchin. I've studied this stuff for you. I showed you my library here not too long, at least portions of it. Portion of one bookshelf that I have. I have hundreds of books. I've read them all. I've gone to tons and tons of educational institutions. I've gone to religious institutions of various types. I think everybody knows that. I don't take these things lightly. This doesn't mean, again, that I figured it all out. But at the same time, we're ignoring some things. Some of these people are ignoring things. And the Egyptian side of it, the Egyptians had some problem, but they got a bad rap by the Israelites too, or by the Jews really, by the Hasmoneans, who actually did it to them. a little bit before that. The Babylonian captivity started some of this stuff. But a lot of things that the modern Judaism follows, and even ancient Israelite religion, came from Egypt. A lot of it did. A lot of it. The idea of the resurrection, you know, that, that came from there. Osiris and all that. The resurrection, you know, the afterlife, those types of things. The history shows that at least the early Hebrews didn't really think about an afterlife. They really didn't think about that. I mean, it was there under some circumstances, but that really wasn't it. It was more, this is kind of your thing here, and then you're kind of done, almost like that. Not entirely true, because it depends upon some of the background of some of the people that are looking at that. But that was by and large the case. So anyway, this thing with the YHVH came up, and I'm a stickler on that one because I know what that is. That is a system of the family of God. That is a system of what we are: mother, father, and children. That is what that is. There are many other meanings to it. Where the Israelites, where the Jews got it, that who they took it from, because it didn't originate with them. Even in their own story, Moses says, what's your name? I don't know your name, right? There's some indications earlier than that people like Abraham did know about that, but that's the story, that nobody really knew his name, and it was Moses that revealed that. Well, that's not true. It just isn't true. Historically and archaeologically, we know that it was in Egypt prior to the Mosaic period, and it was also by other people that were that the Egyptians knew about. Okay, let's just put it that way. And so it's been around for a while. The pagan idea, the Christians in particular and Jews in particular, they like to point fingers, and Islam, I'll throw them in here too, point at people that don't believe the way they do, so they're pagans. Well, I'm sorry, but the pagans had a lot of good ideas. One was the importance of the family and ancestry. Sometimes it went too far and they got into ancestor worship. I understand that. But you know what? At least they knew who they were talking about. These other people that talked about God, they have no idea who or what he is, other than what they hear from the preacher on the pulpit, right? Or what they think they read in the scriptures. At least knowing that you have a family ties you to something. And the Bible's talked about that, where it says in several places, that the curse is to be left without root or branch. What does that mean? That means that you're left without ancestors and you're left without children, posterity. So that important part of a lot of the pagan understanding is very important. And why was it abused by these other Abrahamic religions? Well, because they don't want you to know who you are. I think the unknown God. I know Paul talked about that. Who is this unknown God we're here to declare to you? I guess it was Peter that actually said that. But the recorder saying that. But the point is, so what is the YHVH? And I've said, okay, it's a system more than a name. And the reason why you couldn't blaspheme it is because you're blaspheming yourself. When you use that to try to get some type of an advantage over somebody in a contract or whatever, or if you claim to be of that lineage, and then you don't act like it, in both of those instances, you're blaspheming the name, which is really blaspheming yourself. It's really abusing yourself is what it's doing. But anyway, then these people say, well, gee, Jesus said that he taught it's in John, I believe, he taught the people the true name of the Father, the true name of God. He revealed it to them. Really? Yeah, I know it says that. But it wasn't the YHVH that he was revealing, because they already knew that. The YHVH, they knew what that was. So it couldn't be that he's revealing to them. It was something else. Was it just Father? No. Father's not a name. Father's an office. Father is how you address your father. Hey, Dad. Hey, Father, right? You usually don't address your dad, like my son saying, hey, Roy, Usually, I mean, it happens, but that's not the preferred method. It's not the most respectful. But Father is still in office, just like God is, just like President is, all those. There are lots of fathers, right? So, what was the name that Jesus revealed to his followers that they didn't know before? That they didn't know before. Again, it couldn't be the YHVH, because they knew about that. So it was some other name. Am I going to tell you what it is? I could tell you what I think it is, and you might accept it, you might not. It's in the scriptures. It's right there. It's actually in the Egyptian as well. It's actually everywhere, but you don't recognize it because of the way that you've been taught to read the scriptures and how to interpret them. I will say this: you are a part of that system. You are a part of that system. You are a part of that family. I'll just leave it at that. Let's get back to some of these other things because I'm probably chasing people away. Okay, this thing came out the other day with Netanyahu, right? He's been missing for a few days, and everybody's talking about it. I've even kind of mentioned it to some extent. There was a video that came out that was obviously AI, where he's talking about, and by the way, I couldn't hear the Hebrew. I'm not real good at modern Hebrew. I stick with biblical Hebrew for a lot of reasons, but I did try to listen to what he was saying, and I couldn't because the translator was talking over him so bad I couldn't hear it. But I did go get the transcript that's in Hebrew, okay, the modern Hebrew, and it's the one where he's talking about the Messiah will return. And there was this argument over whether he said. There were people who say, well, no, the real translation is that the Messiah is coming, even though the translator used the phrase, the return of the Messiah. And I saw this big hoop-de-doo over that. And of course, why are they showing this AI image of him? Where is he? Did he die in a missile attack? I don't know. Is he hiding because he knows they're looking for him? Well, I don't know. It could be. And if he is hiding, he's a coward. He's making his people go through all this, but he's not gonna face it with them. And then, along those same lines, you've got the people in Trump administration going to military bunkers now. They're cowards. They want you to suffer the possibility of death and destruction. But oh no, they're going to save their asses, their skins. They're going to go to the bunkers. It tells you a lot about who they are. I guess they went to that military installation. So I think it's not far from Fort Belvoir, Virginia, where they have the system there. But it might be in another couple of places. Or they could be spread out in several different places. There is the continuity of government thing with different areas where different parts of the government continuity can go. And in case one gets wiped out, another can take care of it. But regardless, leaders are supposed to be out front, not go cowering in some cave somewhere. So anyway, Netanyahu is either dead or he's hiding. Okay, it's one of the two. Or he's injured so badly that, they got to keep him out of the spotlight. Whatever the issue is. But I've got another take on that. And the other take is he talked about, again, there's a question about this return of the Messiah statement that he made, or the AI of him made. And I couldn't quite make out what was going on. So like I said, I went and I got the transcript. And I talked about this on X. Well, I didn't talk about it. I wrote a rather lengthy entry on it, a thread on it. And I just want you to know that there's something really funky going on here, okay? Just so you know, all right? Got to put my glasses on so I can see what I wrote down here. Okay, so I'm not going to read it in Hebrew, but I'll read what he apparently said. He is quoted as saying, we will arrive at the point of the coming of the Messiah. That's how people are saying he actually meant it. But the way the translator said it, who was speaking, it says, we will arrive to the return of the Messiah. That's what he said. Now, when I looked at the Hebrew in the transcript, it is true that he talks about an arrival, that we will arrive. The word is Nebria, okay? We will arrive. But the arrival part of the Messiah, whether it was the return of the Messiah or the coming of the Messiah, it wasn't in the transcript. This is really crazy. The word that the transcription in Hebrew was, which really surprised me, was labiat. Labiat? Labiat? Well, that's not coming. That's not arrival. You know what the word means? Lioness. And I saw that. I said, what is going on here? If this was done by the Israeli IC, what kind, is that a mistake? Is it an oversight? How could they do that? How could they make that mistake? If they meant like a coming, it would be another word, Lakzar. Well, but it's not. It has a lamed at the beginning of it. All right? But it's not. But why did they put lioness in there? And then I went down and I looked at another thing. What would return be if the word return was used? Well, of course it's biblical, but it's very similar. And I'm just wondering if maybe they just copied the wrong word. I don't know. But here's something that's really interesting. It's kind of a joke. Ladies, I'm sorry, this is a little off color, okay? Hopefully there are no kids listening to this. If there are, you might want to just cover their ears for a minute. They probably won't know what I'm talking about. There's a part of the female anatomy that sounds a lot like the word labia. I think you know what I'm talking about. Technically, when you look at the etymology of the word for labia, the etymology says it's Latin, right? It says it's Latin. But it's really funny that it's very close to the Hebrew word for lioness. And it just made me remember a line from a movie some years ago. It was My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And the mother there, the Greek mother, is talking about, a woman, she needs to be a lady in the living room, but a tiger in the bedroom. A lioness would be another way to put it. And so lioness and the use of the labia. Okay, you know where my mind went on that one. Kind of interesting anyway. So what is the real etymology? Did the Latins get it from maybe the Hebrew word? A woman is being a lioness, and in that very, very intimate place. Okay, forgive me, everybody, but I'm not a prude. I think everybody knows that. I'm not a prude. I think the way that God made us is just wonderful, and it's meant to be something very beautiful. And unfortunately, both by religious standards, whether or not you understand that or not, by religious standards and by worldly standards, both, it's been mistreated. It's been degenerated, depraved. The way they view it, the whole idea of that relationship. So much so that I heard the other day. Did you know? Here's an interesting little piece of factoid. Kellogg's cereal, right? Well, I found out. Do you know why Mr. Kellogg invented the cornflakes? Do you know why? It wasn't just because, it was a new way of making food, or, he wanted to make money. His real reason for doing that was because he felt that eating meat made you more sexually excited. And he wanted to calm the sexual excitement down in people because the population was getting too much. And of course, it's, that kind of activity between a man and a woman is dirty, 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 right? That was the real reason why he made cornflakes. It was really kind of a depopulation program. Look it up. It was crazy. And so we've been attacked as men and women for so long. Yeah, there are responsibilities. You don't want to, you want to be careful. You don't want to be doing, intimate things out in public, all that stuff. Okay. But to denigrate it across the board and say it's filthy, dirty, and all that it's done a lot of damage to us. And I pointed that out in many videos in the past, how it's confused the children. That's why you're having this big problem with all the tranny stuff, transgender, and LGBTQ and all that, because right in the scriptures it tries to tell you, it's interpreted as saying don't get married. A lot of people interpret those things this way. And now here we have Mr. Kellogg, and he wasn't the only one, by the way. Okay, I just thought you'd like to know that. Okay, so in other words, Netanyahu, I can't tell, but somehow the word lioness came in there. The return of the we have arrived at, the translator said, at the return of the Messiah. We will arrive at the return of the Messiah. When what he actually said was, according to the transcript itself, was we will arrive at the lioness Messiah. That doesn't work. At least not in my mind. So some hokey pokey weird stuff, abracadabra, something is going on there, and I just thought I'd alert you to it. Okay. Is Netanyahu setting himself? For a long time I've talked about the two messiahs. Trump and Netanyahu have been wanting to be involved in being the two messiahs. Trump has gotten even a throne, a crown from the Jews, saying he's the king of Jerusalem. There's the thing about him becoming king of the world when you talk about the tarot cards and some other stuff. Then Netanyahu, had that little discussion with Schneerson back in 1999, I think it was, where Schneerson said he would be the one to usher in the Messiah. The Lubavitchers think that Schneerson was the Messiah, and they even think today that he's going to be resurrected to come back as the Messiah. So there are all kinds of things about what Netanyahu was apparently saying in this little AI thing. It probably wasn't even him if it was AI. About some Messiah, either the coming of the Messiah or the return of the Messiah. And I already talked about the problem with that entire discussion that he made, that entire statement. But at any rate, what if Netanyahu is setting himself up to be a quote-unquote resurrected Messiah? What if that's the case? Now, I have pointed out that Zionists in particular, but Jews in general, they won't tell you this, but the Jews look at themselves not just as the chosen people, not just that, but they also look at themselves as the Messiah, as I say, the Messiah without metaphor, that they are the Messiah. They are and there's the esoteric side of that, where there is a kind of a supernatural type of, not really supernatural, but an actual leader Messiah. There is that too. But a lot of them look at it as being themselves, the people themselves. And I've talked about that before. That they, as a people, are the Messiah without metaphor. They are the Messiah. And that's why they're supposed to rule the world in the last days. So I came up with this thing with Netanyahu saying this return of the Messiah could be, because he mentioned in the same discussion, this AI of him, that Israel is going to become a world power. And of course, they want more than just where they are now. They want the greater Israel, and then they want the entire world to rule. So under that circumstance, they would become the Messiah. They would rule. They would be the rulers. And they talk about it all the time. And if you don't know that, you need to go look it up. They talk about it today. And that everybody who's non-Jew will be their slave. Okay? That's just the way it is. Either a slave or not here anymore, sent away. Kicked off the planet is the way I've heard it in inner circles. But anyway, so maybe this thing is to set Trump and Netanyahu have been kind of involved in this game together, but they're also in competition. Okay, for all I know, maybe Trump did, whack Netanyahu. I don't know. I don't know. But at any rate, there's another possibility that maybe Netanyahu's trying to set himself up to come back as the resurrected Messiah. I don't know. Just a possibility, or at least the return, whatever that means, or the coming of it. Okay. Then I don't know what's going on there, but it's obviously something to be aware of. I've also mentioned many times here on YouTube and on X that this war isn't going to work out the way the prophecies are used to force. The people are using forced prophecy to try to make it happen. I've told you this is all forced prophecy, okay? It's anachronistic. with the way they're trying to apply those ancient scriptures, all kinds of problems with it. But uh, it's not going to work out the way they think. I've pointed out on X and on YouTube several times that every time there has been a Jewish type, and Jews really only started right after the destruction of the Second Temple. I don't know if you understand that or not. Modern day rabbinic Talmudic Judaism started, well, rabbinic Judaism started right around the destruction of the Second Temple, but principally afterwards in what's called the Council of Yavna in about 90 AD. That's when rabbinic Judaism really took off. Then the Talmud was formalized, written down, which was the oral tradition, all those things. Okay, uh, the original Israelite tradition was really nothing like what Judaism is today. Very, very dissimilar, as a matter of fact. And it started to change kind of during the Babylonian captivity, as I've explained, but it really changed during the Hasmonean dynasty, the Maccabees. Okay, big changes there, and I've talked about that. I'm not going to go into it here. I brought up Dr. Jonathan Adler's book, The Origins of Judaism, and how that has come about. When the Jews say that they've been around for thousands of years, no, they have not. Not in the way they are today. That just isn't true. It just is not true. Okay, they are not like the original Israelites. They're not even like the original Hebrews. Even if they could claim that they have that DNA, their mindset and what they do is nothing like those original Hebrews. Okay, they're just not. Um, and I have friends that are Jews. I think most of you know that. And I've tried to give credence. I've tried to give voice to some of the Jews on X who are against the Zionist stuff. But I also understand there's a guy by the name of Sam Parker. He's apparently lives in Utah, as I understand. I've tried to reach out to him, but I don't have DMs anymore because I won't play Elon's game. But Sam Parker apparently lives in Utah, and apparently he was a Mormon at one time, if he's not still. He doesn't have a whole lot of respect for Senator Mike Lee, I can tell, and that's well deserved. But you know, um, I'd like to get a hold of Sam. I'd like to have a discussion with him, and so I guess it's another chance for me to just say that. How he'd get a hold of me at this point, I don't know. Just tell me in on X. Hi Roy, I know about you. Maybe we can work out a way, without making it public where we're going to meet or whatever. But that I think would be very advantageous to us. I can add some information that he has to what he has, and he could add some to mine. Um, anyway, that's just a side note, just to bring that up. Um, so the temple was destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans. I've talked about that. That's another example of a messianic movement that was destroyed every single time. Despite what the Jews say that they've outlived all these other empires, no, that's not true. You could say that about a lot of religions, a lot of groups of people. The fact of the matter is that every time this messianic thing has come about, and it's normally a forced prophecy situation, it's been annihilated, it's been destroyed, and there's been a lot of pain, suffering, and death surrounding it. I talked about 70 AD. I talked about the Bar Kokhba or the Kasiba rebellion. There was one also earlier in about the 130 CE or somewhere in there. Same thing happened. I always forget the name of that one. But these things continually are going on by these people that say that God's given them the right to land, and that they're the chosen people, and that they're going to rule the world, and they'll tell you that. Every time they've done this, it's turned into a situation of mass death and destruction. Every single time. And this time's not going to be any different. So, again, as I was talking about, I'm going to go back to Sam Parker for a minute. He was talking about the thing where he says that there are two sides, that they are presenting two sides of the Zionist Jewish argument. They're trying to say that normal Jews are not the people that are in Zionism and Judaism. the more the people are trying to protect themselves from the backlash of what the Zionists are doing, are saying, we're Jews, we don't go along with what the Zionists are doing. It's against what the scriptures are. It's against what the Torah says to do, the Tanakh. It's against what God's commands are. And then the Zionists saying, of course, they represent all Jews and that they're the chosen people, etc. Well, Sam Parker pointed out that he thinks that possibly these Jews that are more conservative, that's the wrong word, but not involved overtly in the Zionist movement, still believe in it, and that they are more or less just there to play the victim side of what the Zionists are doing. In other words, they really, I think what Sam is saying is that it's a movement to confuse us as to what the Jews really want. And there's some truth to that, I think. I was amongst them for a long time. As I've mentioned, I was mentored by a couple of capitalist rabbis, actually more than that. But and people are, who are they? We want to know who they are. Well, like I'm going to tell you. I think they're gone now, but if they aren't, they probably go after them. So I'm definitely not going to do that. But I think Sam's onto something, because the problem is in the Tanakh itself, in the Old Testament itself, and of course in the Talmud, and of course in the Kabbalistic literature. The Jews who even say that they're not Zionists still believe that they are the Messiah without metaphor, that they are the ones that will rule the earth eventually. And that they have a right to these things. It's in the Tanakh. They have, even though I've talked to them, I've sent them messages and all that, and they say, look, rabbis, etc., you really, really need to reconsider how you're viewing your Tanakh and your holy writings and all of that. It's hard to anybody who's asked to examine their religion that maybe they have some error in there. It's hard for them to do, because they don't want to seem like they're unfaithful. They don't want to seem like they're turning their back on the truth, whatever that is, right? So they resist that. But I did ask them to do that, especially in the circumstances about the punishment that they can place upon Amalek or anybody that disagrees with them. And they have said to me, yeah, we know that's anachronistic, that it can't be applied the way it is today. But then there's still the scriptures there that are used. Something's wrong in the Tanakh, and I've talked about that for a long time. Its origins, how it came about, the efforts of these people who were a small, actually, group of people, a small tribe who are trying to get some recognition in the world, came up with their own God and all this stuff, their own language. Well, their language was similar, but the point is they made up a history, and this really started during the Babylonian captivity. The rewriting, or I should say the writing of what they had learned orally, and some writings, but they really rearranged it to make themselves a separate people, an identity. Did it come from God? I don't know. I've never really thought. Well, I did, at one time I did think so, but over the years, especially after I really started studying these things decades ago, I realized that there was a problem in their story. The Bible sounds real good. It seems, like it has a continuity to it, a consistency. And in some ways it does, but in other ways it's really no more consistent. It's really no more better in teaching you how to be a moral life than reading Shakespeare, honestly. And that's what I mean. These things have been, what humans should be like, what mankind should be like, is known. It's not a mystery, but you can build an entire religion around fabrications of things, and a lot of that is the case. I'm not saying it all was. But too much of it is, and it's unfortunate. Okay, moving on to the next thing, okay? I'm rambling on here, but Saturday afternoon I figured I needed to do this. All right. Trump. I got to end on Trump. I think I told you that back when Trump was building his Trump hotel in Vegas and some other things, of course, he used local contractors for that. And this was back in the 90s, okay? 90s, maybe early 2000s, but mostly in the 90s, I think. A lot of crazy things that he did in New Jersey, Atlantic City, with the casinos and going bankrupt. He's involved in these beauty pageants and things where now it's looking like there may have been some nefarious activities going on there, not just in the organization itself, but by him as well. All the things in the Epstein files that they're trying to keep under wraps and that people believe, and probably rightly so, that Israel, especially Netanyahu, has this schmut on him, on Trump. But Trump is schmut anyway. And it's really distressing to me how many people, again, old military retirees, former military, police people that know should have the ability to discern evil, and they just don't. They don't do anything about it. Well, so I had a friend who was a contractor in Las Vegas who is very aware of the situation where Trump stiffed all these contractors who built his hotel. That he stiffed them for millions of dollars. And when he was questioned about it, even on an interview, um, his answer to how he felt about it was, "Well, my attorneys are better than their attorneys." When people are like this, they don't change. They can play act. They can pretend to be something they're not, but they don't change. And the proof is in the pudding about what we've seen. Not only now, but in his first term. What happened with the LV massacre? And I've talked about that. I'm not going to bring it up again here now again, other than to say I think that was a sacrifice he made to his God. I really do. I think there's plenty of evidence for that. The whole situation with him not going after Hillary when he promised he would. The attack on Syria when he said he wasn't going to do that. Certainly the COVID thing. The whole thing with the OWS, Operation Warp Speed, and how he still pushes that today. What he did to the people that supported him, how he abandoned them. He's all for himself. If he's not the Antichrist, he is an Antichrist. And I don't like that term, actually, for a lot of reasons, but it kind of fits for this discussion. But here's some other things, okay? So he stiffed all those contractors in Las Vegas, right? He conned us on OWS, promised immigration reform, getting rid of the immigration problem. It's all been a show, almost to the point where really what it's come down to is more surveillance of Americans and more harassment of Americans and losing their First and Second Amendments, right? His during the negotiations with Iran and some other things, but especially the negotiations with Iran, right in the middle of the negotiation, attacking them. That's just more of how he operates. And people will say, "Well, they're our enemy. Go after them." Hey, that's how you lose whatever loyalty and confidence people were giving you. You lose it that way, and America looks really bad right now, really bad. I mean, we've had a problem for a long time, but this is really bad. To attack people while you're supposedly negotiating a peace deal. And of course, the excuse was, well, that was Iran. They were just trying to lengthen it out so that they could do it. It doesn't matter. You're the one that made the attack, Trump. Now, here was a really weird one, and I found this out today, and I don't know if this is 100% true, but it wouldn't surprise me given the LV deal, right? Okay, the deal with stiffing the contractors in Las Vegas. I heard today, um, and I haven't checked it all the way, but it rings true. I'm just saying, I'm giving a little caveat here, but it wouldn't surprise me. You remember the attack on Venezuela and the capture of Maduro? Lauded as being, oh, it's our great military doing all this stuff. Kind of, kind of like when Petraeus, was given control over the Afghan war, and the way he handled it was by paying off the Taliban. He actually gave them money to not attack the Americans and to agree with things. That was his big move, right? Uh, what a joke, right? Paying them not to fight you, literally paying them. Well, apparently that's sort of what happened with this thing on the invasion of Venezuela. Um, Apparently there was a promise made to the inside security and military people um, who were under Maduro to turn on him. And they were promised, according to the story, $50 million to turn him over to the United States. The story is that Trump promised them $50 million to turn Maduro over to us. It had something to do with his driver and some other people that were, in positions of power. Well, guess what? According to this story, Trump stiffed them, and he hasn't paid them, and apparently doesn't plan on paying them. Now, what does that mean? Well, along with what he did to the people in Iran by attacking them when he promised to do negotiations, uh, and what he's done there generally, allowing the types of bombings that he's done there, um, going along with Israel and how they've treated the Gazans and Palestinians in general, and there are other countries that are close to them, supporting the Greater Israel Project, all these different things that he's done. The tariffs. I'm not against tariffs, but the problem is you're paying for them, right? Mostly, right? I mean, he's going to do away with the IRS, but he's going to get money out of you one way or another. Okay, I just watch him there. But the point is, he stiffed these people that handed Maduro over to him, and with all the people that he screwed in his life, stolen from, made promises and then not kept them, broken contracts, etc., etc., maybe he better go live in a bunker. Because I'll tell you what, you get the Iranians after it, and they made this big deal. Oh, the Iranians wanted to kill Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. I don't believe that any longer. I finally decided that was a drama that he put on for lots of reasons. One, the blood splatter doesn't make any sense, but there are other things. And killing somebody else in the audience just lends credence to it. If you ever watched Jack Reacher, the first one, that's what happens at the start of the movie. A sniper shoots a bunch of people to cover up who he was really trying to kill. Okay, so other people dying in a drama put on like that isn't necessarily saying that it wasn't just a show. So anyway, at this point, I've convinced myself with the lack of evidence and the lack of information they put out that was in fact a drama put on, and the way they conducted themselves during that whole thing. And of course, there was a deal at the golf course, and trying to link that into Ukraine and Iran and all this. It's all baloney. It's all to show his machismo, that he's this hero, he's this messiah figure. Well, anyway, it wouldn't be a bit surprising to me with him having screwed all these people that maybe he better go live in a bunker, because I think they're going to come after him. The Iranians have great secret intelligence operatives. Venezuela certainly does. Yeah, I think he's pissed off enough people that maybe he better worry about his skin. I'm not threatening him. I'm telling him that he's done some bad things and people aren't going to forget. The bad thing is I hope it doesn't fall on a lot of innocent American people. That I'm worried about. I'm worried about it falling on a lot of innocent American people who just trusted him that he would do the right thing by them, and he has screwed us every possible way. I was going to say something else, but in every possible way. The draft, they're talking about, they're just going to automatically register young men from 18 to 26 with the draft, and it'll eventually go to your daughters if we don't do something to stop this. If there's a war worth fighting, and if the government is worth fighting for, the people will stand up and take the mantle on to do that. That's a form of voting. If you believe that what we're doing is right, you'll go and do something about it. That's a form of voting. But to force somebody to fight, that's taking away your freedom, your agency, and it's tyranny. Conscription is tyranny. If the government is worth saving, the people will save it. If it isn't, then you've got the situation in the Declaration of Independence, where if it's not worth saving, people have a right to alter it or abolish it. We're just not, and by altering it, the conscription, not following through with that. No, we're not doing that. You're not getting my sons and daughters, no way. So at any rate, he's gone against you on that. New wars, regime change, whatever. He's done it all. And it's going to get worse. He was put in to destroy America. I'm not saying Biden wasn't doing the same thing. I'm not saying Obama wasn't doing the same thing. But Bush was doing the same thing. This has been a long process, and it started in the 1800s. Okay, I probably talked long enough. It's been a good hour. Let me just see if we've got some things here I should add. All right. Oops, sorry. I'm going to go this way. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, I don't know about that. Pam Graham, that the guy from Syria said that the ancient Jews came from Yemen and Ethiopia. They're all kinds. You got, first of all, who are the Jews, right? Who are the Jews? If they're saying they're Judahites, as I've explained many, many times, that's one tribe out of 12, according to the story anyway. One tribe out. They're not all the Israelites. That somehow the Jews come from Ethiopia and Yemen? There are a lot of problems with that historical claim. I don't buy it. I'm sorry, I don't. There are problems with the whole Israelite story. As I pointed out at the very beginning of this, the idea of Abraham. He goes to eat. Well, here's a point. Leonard the Reader. I follow him. He's very good. And if you want to, you should probably follow him. He discusses books that he reads, and for one, he did the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, for instance, and talked about how, even if it's not a forgery, but somebody made it up. The funny thing is it's almost all come true. Well, he's talked about a book in the last day or so about circumcision and where it really came from. And just like the name YHVH, which in Egyptian hieroglyphics I've shown you what that is. Okay, in the past I've shown you what it is. It's in hieroglyphics, and I'm not going to go there today. But the point is, it was Egyptian. All right, prior to the formation of the supposed Israelite and even later Jewish religion. But at any rate, so Leonard the Reader's got this book about circumcision and where it came from. Of course, there was a big discussion in the New Testament between Paul and the Jews about whether or not, and the Jews meaning James, the brother of Jesus, a lot of attacks against like long hair and stuff is actually Paul attacking James, but that's another story. the circumcision became a point of contention that they were saying, well, Gentiles don't need to do that, and then but if they're going to join, if they're going to become part of the Israel people, they got to have the circumcision. Anyway, this big fight is in the New Testament concerning this, and then in the Old Testament you have things where it talks about the circumcised who have the rights over things over the uncircumcised, all this kind of thing, and attacks and pejoratives about uncircumcised people. Well, whatever. The fact of the matter is, as Leonard points out, I was really surprised he did this. Circumcision was well known, well practiced, not widely practiced, but practiced by the Egyptian royalty nobility 400 years before Moses. 400 years before Abraham. 400 years before Abraham. It was considered, a sign of sophistication, I guess you could say. So it wasn't a new thing under Abraham. It wasn't a new thing under Abraham. Abraham had been to Egypt. If Abraham was a real character, okay, there are a lot of good things about the Abrahamic character that are very, very worthwhile in emulating. I agree. Whether or not he's a real person, that's up to debate. But regardless, considering the time frames and all that, even the story is that Abraham went down into Egypt with Sarah, and he wasn't circumcised at the time, but he was circumcised later. I think he went down to Egypt when he was about 70 years old. And if you remember, the Pharaoh saw Sarah and said, gee, I like that woman. And Abraham said, Sarah, tell him you're my sister. And she was his half-sister. According to the record, that'll get some people upset, but that's a fact. According to the record, she was his half-sister. Same father, different mother. And anyway, so he says to Sarah, tell Pharaoh that you're my sister so that he won't kill me. Well, whatever, the Pharaoh finds out and then says, Abraham, why did you do this to me? The God's mad at me now. Well, that's funny. Why would the Pharaoh of Egypt have any respect for the God of Abraham? What's going on there? Turns out it's the same God, okay? That's why. But anyway, so Abraham was there, and apparently, when he was 90 years old, after he'd long left Egypt, then the thing about circumcision came in. Now, I'm not going to argue the pros and cons of circumcision. My point in this is to say that a lot of these things didn't originate with the Hebrews, with the Israelites, especially not the Jews. There were things like the Hammurabi Code. Okay, there were the Egyptian things, and I've told you about that your heart should be as light as a feather, and that when you are brought before God in the afterlife, your heart is weighed against a feather, and if the heart is heavier than the feather, you got a problem. In other words, you have to have a good conscience. You have to have lived a good life. So here we are again, finding out that things aren't quite the way we've been told. All right, and I'll end on this. That apparently, I hope that answered your question there, Pam Graham. No, I don't buy the story that they came from Yemen and Ethiopia. Actually, the Ethiopians, historically, there's some things there, especially with the Gnostics, the Nag Hammadi group, and all that, which I won't go into now. But that was post 70 A.D. Okay. Somebody said, Mean Gene Jared is probably the handler. I wouldn't doubt it at all. He has a look that I don't trust. Okay, he's nefarious. He is, and I wouldn't doubt that he's been pushing a lot. They are even fascists at times. The dogma temples. Yeah, 501. Oh yeah. Roy, could you speculate on what the consequences might be if Israel used a nuclear weapon against Iran? I haven't war gamed that out. I'm sure the Pentagon has. But you're asking for a speculation. Israel is going to be destroyed like they were in 70 AD. No matter what, at this point, look at what's happening. I mean, Tel Aviv is it's not as bad as Gaza yet, but it's getting there. You have people leaving Israel. They were, and when they couldn't leave, they're trying to find ways to get out. Um, and I predicted back, because of this whole messianic thing and the forced prophecies that have happened in the past, that the same thing would happen this time. That Tel Aviv, at least Tel Aviv, if not all of Israel, is going to be wiped away. Okay, you can't mock God this way. And I'm not even talking about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, I'm talking about God in general. You can't do the things that they do in God's name, whether or not it's the YHVH or whatever else they believe in. Frankly, I pull all this information in. The bottom line is, if Iran, if Israel does that to Iran, Israel will disappear. Now, Israel will want to take a lot of people with them. They've talked about the Samson thing where they've got nuclear weapons pointed at Washington, D.C., who knows where else in the United States, all because we won't support them. So we become Amalek and we deserve to be destroyed. Now, certainly Eastern Europe, Russia, all that other, they're pointing there too. How many they've got, I don't know. But the end result is they will be wiped. They will be turned into glass. Okay? That's what will happen to them. But see, they don't care. Well, they do care because they want to rule the world, but they'd rather rule over the ashes than fix the world. Tikkun olam is a joke, and I talked about this before. It doesn't. It means the idea of repairing the world, fixing the world, but it's not like most Christians think. Oh, peace, tranquility. That's not what they're talking about. Tikkun olam in their vernacular means that they rule the world. It's a pax judaica. Okay, you do what we tell you to do, or we kill you. We clean you away. We wipe you away. We use the Islamic people to broom you away, as a broom to sweep you away, and then we get rid of them. You see, that's what it really is when it comes down to it. So anyway, if Israel does that, they'll be turned into glass, and it's going to be bad for the whole world, absolutely. But that's what will happen. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, John B79. Yeah, things aren't normal, and they're not going to be normal for quite a long time. Yeah, Trump must Key West Cat said Trump must have sold his soul to the devil. He is the devil. He's one of them. He's the incarnation of one of the fallen angels. I mean, it's just so obvious to me. Netanyahu too, for that matter. And Netanyahu might be trying to explain himself at the judgment seat of God right now. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there. This could all be another game, but regardless, even if Netanyahu is dispatched, even if he is, things aren't really going to change that much. What will change is this supposed prophecy of the Messiah that he and Schneerson talked about. Maybe he is the last PM. Let's say he's been dispatched and he is the last PM. Well, now their Messiah better show up or the prophecy is going to be bad. And whoever this prophecy is, I think Trump wants to be the guy. He's kind of been promised that by a certain number of the rabbis and things. But if he's as erratic as he has been in the past little while, man, I wouldn't want to call him a Messiah by any stretch of the imagination. But their Messiah is not a spiritual leader. I hope you all understand that. Their Messiah is not a spiritual leader. He's a military victor, conqueror. That's their Messiah, and that Israel becomes the world ruler. That is their vision, and it's been that way since the Hasmoneans at the very least. Okay. Trump has been a closet Lubavitcher Jew for a long time. I called that out even before people started seeing it. I could tell by his hair, by what he talked about, by the emblems that he had. Yeah, he had a respect for the Greek god Apollo. Greek god. I always get the Greek and Roman gods confused. Anyway, the god Apollo. He's got all that gold stuff and all that everywhere. That's Apollo. But in his mind, that would be the same thing, okay? Trump's a very evil man, very, very evil. And I had hopes back in 2016, but things just kept coming up that didn't add up. And by the Las Vegas massacre in 2017, October 27, he already said he wasn't going to go after Hillary even before he took the office. He was president elected. He said he was backing away from that, and then all the other stuff that he did. LV massacre, I didn't quite see through that initially, but then it became blatantly obvious, and then the whole thing with the DEF CON happened in January of 2018, I think it was, if you remember, that he supposedly was calling that there was a DEF CON 1. That was all through the Q business and all that. Then I finally realized he wasn't who he said he was, and I've been warning about him since the end of 2017, early 2018. Very evil man, and yes, they probably do have Roy. You're no Howard Buttlick. Trey Phillips, I certainly hope not. All right. Yeah, let's see. Boy, you guys are really Senator Linda Bottom Boy Graham. Yeah. Senator Lindsay. There's another evil, wicked man. If he is a man, whatever he is. I called him Linda too the other day. I was answering. There's a lady on X, and she has her own podcast and stuff. She goes by Village Crazy Lady on X. Her name's Mel. Excellent. I mean, some of these women out there are so good at what they do. And they're right there. They don't have to think about it. They have so much information that as soon as something happens, they can analyze it and get an explanation out. And Mel, Village Crazy Lady, I forget her real last name, is one of those. She just amazes me. And she's not mealy mouthed. If she doesn't like what you say, she'll say, she'll just do it. I really amazed at her. So, yeah. But anyway, when I answered her, I said, yeah, Senator Linda Graham. Linda Graham. So yeah, that's how that goes. Okay. Yeah, Walski, I don't mind saying Shabbat Shalom. That doesn't mean I'm Jewish, right? There are a lot of good things in the Hebrew scriptures, in all of that. As you know, I've studied the Hebrew language and their spiritual system. And out of all the spiritual systems, people are going to say, right, why? Well, because it still shows up. There's still things there that despite the bad stuff, I still see a lot of good. The idea of God being within you and all that, the kingdom of heaven is within you and all that, which is said to be Gnostic. It's not only Gnostic, it's been other places as well. Really, an early Israelite religion that was there too. Now, the early Israelites, they had a problem. They did human sacrifice. They did child sacrifice. And the way they got around covering for that is by the prophets saying that that's the reason why God destroyed them. Well, they were Canaanites. They were just another tribe of Canaanites. That's what they were. I'm not going to get into that here, but they don't have clean hands, not by a long shot, and they still practice some of that stuff today. And again, I go back to, as far as the history is concerned, I go back, for your sakes, Dr. Yonatan Adler in his book, The Origins of Judaism. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. Oh, John 79, you can't get on X anymore. They permanently kicked you off because I made memes about. Well, you're a hero then. Look at it that way. Yeah, I understand. You can still go on X. You just can't go and join it. You can go on x.com and then you can put in, at Royston Potter, and you can see at least. You might not be able to read the threads when you do that, but you'll be able to see generally what I'm talking about. So you don't necessarily have to join X, but I think you can still get on it. You just go to x.com, at Royston Potter. You just can't post or anything like that, right? So at least you can get on there and see what I'm talking about and who I'm talking to. Volume is kind of low. I can't do anything about it. It's going to have to be fixed at your end, okay? All right. Now 13. Well, Flipper, they're lying about that. You can't destroy every base in the Middle East and have only 13 13 KIAs. That's all being covered up. Trump's stepped on a bunch of crap here, and he just can't fess up, and neither can Hegseth. They're two buffoons now. I thought Hegseth might be good, but he's turned out to be just as bad, if not worse, than all the others we've had. I don't know that he's a drunk. I don't know that. I don't know anything really there, but he just doesn't have it. Okay, he talks big, but he really doesn't have it. And same with Trump. So at any rate, I think the casualties are much higher than what they're talking about. And if they think they're going to send a Marine expeditionary unit into Iran and do anything of any consequence, they're just freaking out of their minds. Okay, they need. But you got to understand. Okay, the whole point of all this is to drain American treasure and blood. We're the actual end target, even by Trump, even by these people in the administration. The destruction of the American people in every possible way. Our treasure, our blood, our sense of being, our very life. They want to destroy all of that because we are counter as a people. It's been changed with the immigration and also with all the crap on the media, the mainstream media, the nasty stuff from Hollywood, all that. They've been altering us. And from the point of view of those wicked people, if they can get us to do those things, then they can justify destroying us. And God, in their mind, God can't hold them accountable. They pass their sins on to us. We are that goat. Little chicken over the head, we're going to wave the chicken over our head and all our sins are going to go on the chicken. Then we kill the chicken, shed its blood. Now we're free of sin. That's how they view us. We're the beasts of the field. Metaphorically, they're waving us over their head, casting their sins on us so they can justify killing you. That's how it is. All right, I've been going for good grief, an hour and a half. But I wanted to go over some of those things. It's been a while. I really didn't have anything to do until I got to get ready now. I am going to go do some things. But I just felt like I needed to come on and address some of that, especially that situation with Netanyahu and the translator and the transcription, how that didn't match up. Return, coming, lioness. What? There's some hanky-panky going on there. Maybe some spell casting. Wouldn't be a bit surprised. Keep your eyes on the horizon, ears to the ground, situational awareness on high. Continue to prep, pray, stay out of the way. And as you know, when I say stay out of the way, I don't mean that you shouldn't try to have an impact. Look at me. The thing is that you don't want to get decisively engaged in the left-right paradigm. You don't want to get decisively engaged out there when factions are fighting. Protect your own. Protect your own. All right? And they're trying to get it so you can't even do that, but we have to. All right. And with that, I'll say see you later. Thanks for coming. And I'm not sure when the next time will be, but we'll see. All right. Go to X. Just watch what we're doing. Again, you don't have to join. Just go to x.com, @Royston Potter. You won't be able to read the whole threads that I put up, but you'll be able to get an idea of what's going on. At least I don't think you can, okay? But I don't think you have to join X to be able to look at some of the posts, specific ones like that, okay? All right, out here.